Hello and welcome to Personable, a podcast focused on speaking to the world's best, enabling you to become the best that you can be. I'm your host, and today's episode is going to be a bit different. Usually on Personable, I speak to some of the world's best in their given fields, learning more about their journey so that both you and I can become better in our own lives. But today, I'm doing something slightly different. This is my first solo episode. Well, almost solo episode. I'm in fact joined by my mum, Louise Bracken-Smith. I'm certain that she's here with me and with you, in spirit and in love, although not here physically. My mum sadly passed away from cancer a year ago today, on July 12th, 2023. And so I wanted to dedicate an episode exploring her journey and share some of the lessons I learned from the greatest person I've ever known. You see, greatness is not only measured in the number of medals won, money earned, or prizes collected, but also in the way that you treat others and how you're remembered. How you are remembered is perhaps the most important legacy you can leave behind, as it is a living memory of the greatness that you instilled into the earth and the lessons that you shared with those around you. To many people, Louise was a friend, a work colleague, or someone you may have enjoyed listening to through her podcast, Kicking Cancer into Touch, alongside her brother Kieran. And although you may have been touched by her death, the implications of her passing are likely minimal. To myself, my dad Peter, my brothers Freddie and Max, and little sister Georgie, our lives have been changed forever. I'm going to tell you the story of her cancer journey, the lessons she taught me during this time, the last days of her life, the impact of her death, and moving past the grief. Although this podcast is a direct recollection of my family's journey through this horrific process, you might find value in my words if you're going through your own cancer journey, the recent loss of a family member or friend, or are just curious about the lessons learned. How would I describe my mum? I would consider my parents to be the best in the world. They've always been there for my siblings and I, whether it's day or night, it didn't matter. They've never missed a sports match or a major event in any of our lives. I would consider my parents an extension of my brain in how involved they've been in my life and in major decisions. My mum was loved by everyone she met. She lived in the moment and made sure to enjoy the present rather than worrying about the distant future. She taught me to focus on everything that can go right rather than everything that can go wrong. She was the assurance that everything was going to be okay, even if I made the biggest fuck up in the world in my head. Her smile, laugh, and energy were infectious. My dad and siblings would describe her as loyal, very loyal, funny, that she adored her friends, incredibly determined, modest, beautiful, infectious, having no room for nonsense, that she loved to chat, hated leaving a party, was really interested in other people, and always cried in a movie. Whenever my parents had an argument, which was not very often, my mum would simply laugh and smile at my dad, and it would go from a heated exchange to an instant state of calmness. I found her to be a big calming influence in my life. When my mind went into override and I couldn't see the wood for the trees, her words, smile, and energy would always bring me back to center. I miss my mum every day. I love you, Mum. In January 2021, our lives changed forever. We were living our days as normal when suddenly we get a phone call that Mum had sadly gone through a horrific bike crash. I think she clipped someone else's bike, and went down a hill and fell over a fence, suffering a severe concussion, broken ribs, and a cut to her head. Although this was it wasn't a nice experience to see my mum this way. There was never a thought that this was a permanent thing. So, as my mum does, leading a business of over 100 people and, a bit of a go-getter and, it's just a scratch, whatever, move on. It wasn't a scratch. She carried on working, carried on leading her business from the front. But as the weeks went on, it was very apparent that Mum wasn't okay. And the symptoms that she had been having weren't really aligning with having a concussion or broken ribs. Very fortunately, my mum's doctor noticed that something wasn't right and asked her to have some tests. So, I didn't know this at the time, but from my perspective, almost 3 years ago, my dad said that Mum was going to hospital for a few days. I obviously thought it was due to her concussion or whatever, but still not thinking much of it. But she was gone for a good 3, 4, or 5 days, which was very strange because she'd never been away for this long. And we didn't really have much communication with her at the time. At the end of the 5 days, my dad told me that mum was coming home. Freddie, Max, Georgie, and myself were incredibly happy to know that mum was coming home and that we'd be able to see her again. But Dad said that he had some news, but all 6 of us sat in the lounge area. I saw Freddie and I, Georgie, Max, all just play around with each other, not really taking anything serious. My parents sat down and you could see that they wanted to smile and play with us, but that something was actually going on. And until the moment they said the words, I didn't truly appreciate what was going on. Holding my mum's hand really tightly, my dad says, "Mum has cancer." That initial moment was tough. We live on a little island called Jersey, and the idea of her going away was hard, but at the time, myself and brothers, Freddie and Max, were all at boarding school in England. And Mum was going to be living in England for a while to get treatment while we were at school. So this was quite nice. It meant that we could see her on the weekends, spend more time together. She also didn't lose any of her hair, so Mum was still Mum. It wasn't too bad, and there was never a doubt in my mind that I thought she was going to die. I mean, she was and is the most determined, kind, focused person I've ever met. Very no bullshit type of person, and, never a doubt that she wasn't going to make it. And fortunately, by August of 2021, she was cancer-free. We were all over the moon, and Mum was suddenly on this path to truly live again, to go and follow all her dreams. She got really into triathlon in her 40s after having her 4th child at the age of 40. She'd run multiple triathlons and had previously qualified for both Great Britain and Ireland. But the minute her levels the amount of cancer in her blood fell back below the amount that said she had cancer, she was back on it. She ran multiple triathlons within a few months of receiving her positive diagnosis and qualified again for both Great Britain and Ireland in the age category for triathlon. She'd stopped work. She'd been running a business for over 20 years that she founded in Jersey. And she'd always looked at a lot of the other mums who didn't work and sort of been a bit envious of the idea, not about the work. She loved her work, but about being more involved in her kids' lives. Because she now hadn't been working because she'd been ill, she sort of moved on from that life a little bit. And so it enabled her to spend more time with her kids, follow her passion. And at some point, she wanted to sell her business. It just seemed like she had this reinvigorated passion to take on the world. Over time, though, it was very obvious that she unfortunately had not recovered. She felt abandoned by the health system in the UK. As I mentioned, with the levels in your blood, I'm not a medical student, so I'm completely uninformed on this situation. But there's basically an amount of cancer that you can have in your blood, and once it reaches a certain level, it's classed as you have cancer, but if it's below, you don't. And what happened to my mum is it had gone below the level at a single point in time. So in August 2021, it's gone below the level. She no longer has cancer. But then all the testing stopped, that there was no doctor, no checkups, no anything really. And the levels over the next coming months had gone back up. So she actually had cancer. So, when she was really ill and almost on her deathbed, she was amazed that she was able to qualify for her country while actually having had cancer again. But this is one of the major things she wanted to change, no more checkups after being discharged. And it's essentially why she started her podcast, Kicking Cancer into Touch, with her brother, Kieran. So Kicking Cancer into Touch was a limited series filmed last year, basically exploring my mum's cancer journey, for some of the funny situations, some of the more serious ones, telling her kids she has cancer and her impact on the situation. But she really wanted to create it because she felt that there was no real guidance on what it was like to be a cancer patient during this time. And so she wanted to basically show her experience so that others could learn from it and so that they didn't feel abandoned as well. But as I said, life had gone on and we didn't know that Mum had cancer again. I'd been pushing myself a lot out of school and probably was pretty burnt out, to be honest. And so I went through my A-levels and applied to universities, fortunately got a place. And on June 21st of 2022, I was done with school. I was beyond mentally and physically exhausted. And so I flew home alongside my brother Freddie after my last A-level and literally got home within 3 or 4 hours from school back to Jersey. The minute I got in the door, I hadn't unpacked my bags, I hadn't done anything, barely said hi to anyone. My mum and dad again said, "Hey boys, we've got something important to tell you." I had no idea what they were talking about. I mean, my parents had incredibly strong composure. So we went outside and sat on a table. And instantaneously, I looked at the reddening on my parents' faces, my dad holding my mum's hand with strength, and his tears being held back. And I found the whole situation too overwhelming. So I walked 20 meters away. This time I kind of preempted the words as my dad said that mum had cancer again. But this time, instead of it just being cancer, it was incurable, whatever that meant. So I ran up to my room and I barricaded the door, shut the windows. I felt awful. I felt like my head was going to explode. I couldn't take in any more emotions. And I didn't want my parents to see me feeling this awful. I only wanted the best for my family. And so I thought that if I didn't see them, my negative energy and feelings wouldn't spill over. But I couldn't have been more wrong. I locked myself in my room for about 40 minutes, whilst my dad banged on the door and my mother threw small stones at the window. Fortunately, nothing was broken because they were pretty small, but it just showed their impact. But they didn't go away incessantly for 40 minutes after my mum and dad have just told me that my mum has cancer again. They felt a level of angst and discomfort because I'd run off. In my mind, I felt like I was being selfish, but instead it was completely the opposite. After several screaming declarations of love, I finally let them in. They were saying stuff like, "Harvey, we love you. We just want to be with you. We don't care about, if you feel bad, we just want to be there with you. We just want to be there for you. We want to be together. We want to go through this together. We don't have to hide anything. They want to know everything." My mum, as we sat on my bed, my mum and dad, my mum said she wanted to be there for the good and the bad times. She didn't care if I was happy or sad. She just wanted to be there no matter what. Emphasized that we were all in it together. She made me feel comforted and gave me the knowledge that I needed to know that we'd be in this together no matter what. Because I'd finished school, I had this hectic summer of traveling and doing fun things with my friends. But this entire time I felt numb. I hated it because I couldn't be with the person I thought I was going to lose. I mourned that summer. This reached a tipping point for me at the end of the summer. After 2 months of traveling and doing supposedly fun things with my friends, the whole time I just felt awful. Physically, I was away from my mum in England, but mentally I longed every second to be around her. I had stopped getting more than a few hours of sleep and struggled to eat properly. My mind felt scrambled, and my parents realised what was going on and brought me home. When I arrived home, I was supposed to be starting at Duke University in 2 days' time. But fortunately, my visa had not arrived. Mum and myself, my dream was to go to Duke anyways. I'd actually visited in April with my mum after I'd been accepted, and everyone had treated me so nice. It just seemed like this nirvana of places while I was going through my own tough times with burnout, and then following on with my mum's cancer diagnosis. So I really wanted to go, but my dad said, "Oh, you shouldn't go." And I think that was one of the best things that's ever happened to me in my entire life. After deciding not to go, I threw my phone away, deleted all social media, re-immersed myself back into nature, going for sea swims every day with my mum, no matter how cold it was. I spent every day talking to her, talking about life, our relationship, and my future. After spending months at home, spending every waking hour with my mum, which I loved, my mum wanted me to continue with my life. She felt that I was the only one that sort of stopped. My brothers were continuing. My brothers and little sister were continuing with school, my dad with business, but I was stuck. I'd been physically frozen in time because of her situation, but she didn't think this was fair. She didn't want me to continue to spend all my time at home, but instead continue to live life. Over that next year, I worked in London for 6 months pursuing my dreams. I went travelling with one of my best friends for a month. We also went to Ireland as a family for New Year, in what would be the last time my mum would see all of her extended family, an incredibly special time for all of us. But after going travelling in January 2023, I was ready to see the world. I felt like I'd worked, I was ready to move on, I'd seen a bit of the world, I wanted to get out of here and fully be free. But similarly to the situation in August of 2022, my dad said, "Harvey, don't go away, Harvey's not well. Mum's not well." And we carried on going back and forth for a few days, but I said, okay, fine. So I then spent another 2 months in Jersey doing the same thing, which I absolutely loved, chatting to her and asking every question, doing everything we wanted to be. Although she was physically constrained, I didn't feel at all constrained in the amount of time I spent with her. I loved every single second of it. I just felt so present in that time, and anything she said, anything we did, I felt amazing. I felt loved and I felt fulfilled. I then spent another 3 months working in London. And then it's sort of on a, at this point, it becomes a bit of a day-by-day basis as everything happens so quick. I finished work on the 23rd of June of 2023. I came home on the 24th of June. And again, my mum had been going through treatment. I'd seen this determined side of her. I always knew that she was a fighter and that she was going to push through no matter what. I'd always had my doubts for what was going on. So I got off the plane and I met my dad, gave him a massive hug, and there was this cafe nearby. I wanted to get a drink on the way home, about a half an hour drive to home. And unseriously, I asked him a question. I ordered a smoothie and some lunch and sat down opposite my dad. Not really thinking straight, I said, "How's Mum?" No response. His face was filled with emotion, and he looked combated, but with a level of strength. Then I instantly became a lot more serious as I raised some concern over what was going on with Mum. I said, "No, seriously, how's Mum?" and pushed him for an answer. I wanted to know rather than being shielded from reality, something that other family members had done to me by lying about the severity of her condition in an attempt to protect me, but in reality compounding my grief. He said, "The treatment hasn't worked." My next question, "How long?" My dad responds, "I'm not sure. Probably up to Christmas." In that moment, I felt an overwhelming amount of emotion. I cried the whole time home like I've never cried before. And my dad told my mum, he told me. But just felt awful to know that I'd always felt like she was on this fight, and then suddenly the idea that it was going to end and that there was nothing I could do about it just felt really awful. And so on that day, my mum, only a few weeks away from dying, still had amazing amounts of strength. And my birthday was on the 25th, so on the 24th, we went to celebrate my birthday at my cousin's house, loads of my family members, cousins, and my mum. As nice as everyone wanted to be and celebrate, it was hard to celebrate in the condition my mum was in. Every laugh I had, every smile was matched by an internal cry. Nonetheless, it was lovely to enjoy these moments with Mum. On the 25th, I enjoyed my time with Mum. Again, although it was my birthday, I just savoured the moment. 6th, continued sea swimming. 7th, I had some time with my friend, some time spending with my friends. And then the 28th of June 2023 hurt quite a lot. Although I knew my mum's cancer journey was over or going to end, it hadn't felt so real because this entire time, as I said, she was taking steps to get better. So it was always this, like you're training in the gym, you're getting stronger, you're getting better. My mum, her mental determination to beat this thing was so strong. being on that incredibly inspiring journey, the moment it felt like, not that she'd given up, but sort of accepting of it was really hard. So when I got back, I tried to plan how I was going to help get my mum better. I've always been incredibly proactive, but not being able to do anything in this situation was incredibly hard. And so, like, every day, I drove down to the sea for a swim with my mum and some of her best friends in Jersey. But my mum, obviously, over the past few years, had not been able to drink alcohol, eat any bad food. But my mum also really wanted to celebrate her life, and she wanted all of her friends to celebrate what had been going on instead of just being sad that she was gone. And so they all had a celebratory glass of champagne on the beach. And I felt really betrayed. All these people, although this was not their intent, I felt like the idea of her drinking alcohol, all of them around her, I felt like she was giving up. And then the people around her were encouraging her. So I hated it. I hated that day on the beach, all just celebrating. But at the same time, I really enjoyed the celebration with my mum. The 29th, I had a work dinner, so I flew back to the UK, and my best friend came to Jersey for the next 4 days. After that, on the 4th, I spent more time with my siblings and wider family. And I spoke to my mum, and she was just amazed about everything we'd accomplished in the first year. I remember her saying to me, she was like, "Harvey, had my situation not been the case, this would have been one of the best years of our life." In that same year, my brother Max had become player of the tournament, and his school, he'd been player of the tournament, captain, and helped lead his school to winning Roslyn Park, a national sevens tournament for the first time in the school's history. My brother Freddie became head boy at the best school in the world, and my little sister Georgie ended up playing island sports several years above. I worked at both a hedge fund and a VC at 18 years old. My dad was smashing it in business, and my mum, of course, had qualified for Great Britain and Ireland in triathlon when she had cancer. For the 5th to the 8th, for the 12th, from the 5th to the 12th of June, I've written down 2 words: greed and selfishness. My mum had been so selfless, kind to everyone, and so when the news spread that she was going to die, hundreds of people messaged her. But I don't think people understand how detrimental this can be. Let me paint a picture. My mum was 50 years old, built an incredibly successful business, raced for her country, built a persona of love and care, even if this wasn't a conscious decision. But at her heart, she was incredibly selfless. At the end of the day, even with the irrelevant extrinsic values of success, the number one thing she was most proud of was her 4 kids and her husband. There is not a single person, friend, family member, business decision, race, prize, monetary reward, or anything in between that was more important to my mum than those 5 people. Because whenever we were together, my mum felt at peace. All 6 of us did. We were happy. What I thought was incredibly horrific to see was what I would call an abuse of grief and selfish emotion. The difference between that moment when I was upset and wanting to do everything that I could to hide my sadness from my mum in order to not spread any negativity, and a friend, another family member, or some random person she'd met when she was 12, was that I was her child. Anything, any emotion that any of the 5 of us had, she wanted to hear, because we are literally a part of her. In her final weeks of life, my mum's phone was pinging more than a world famous influencer. Not, "I'm sorry, Louise, get well soon," or anything like that, but entire life stories. "I'm sorry, Louise, we should have hung out more." alongside 50 more paragraphs. I actually got divorced 10 years ago. My neighbour's cousin's cat my neighbour's cousin lost their cat 5 years ago. My mum obviously replied to all of these messages because she was a caring person, but it drained the life out of her. My mum, just like any other person in your life, is not your therapist. Don't be selfish with your grief and with your emotions. They say you're the product of your closest 5 people, so you can imagine the impact if hundreds of people every day are telling you about all of the worst things that have happened to them. Similarly, they would just show up at our house. Initially, this was appreciated as 1 or 2 of my mum's friends and family visited our house, but it seemed like it got to the point where anyone and everyone was turning up. And these people didn't just want to say hi, they wanted to have hour-long conversations with my mum, because it could be their last. Let's say you had one of those conversations with my mum 3 weeks before she died. There are 168 hours in a week, and she slept 8 hours a day week 1, 12 hours a day week 2, and 16 hours week 3. That would leave her with 112 waking hours in week 1, 84 waking hours in week 2, and 56 waking hours in week 3. So 252 waking hours left in her life. An hour in that time represented 0.4% of the entirety of the rest of her life. Time spent with someone that should have been spent with my 9-year-old sister who would spend the rest of her life without her mum. Not a 50-year-old going through a midlife crisis. I sadly lost my best friend at 9, and so I thought the hardest bit about losing my mum would be the memories that we would not be able to make with each other in the future. But actually, in those last moments, the unbelievably large amount of selfishness that stole time away from our mum was the hardest part. We are not idiots. My brother Freddie, my dad, and I spoke to many of these acquaintances, friends, and family members and asked them to stop. Fortunately, those that actually cared about us and respected us stopped. But others called us unspeakable things, undermined our character, and personally attacked us. They decided to take their grief out of me. My siblings and I realized that people would come in the morning when my mum would wake up, draining all of her energy and time away, so by the time we had any time to spend with her, she would be asleep. Fortunately, my year off gave me all the time in the world to have the necessary conversations with my mum that I needed to, and so I have no regrets over the conversations that we did or didn't have. I can't say the same for Freddie, Max, Georgie, or my dad, though, and that is a major problem. In those last few weeks, my mum was in hospice at home. The nurses and hospice were beyond unbelievable. They were my mum's guardian angels in that time. It didn't matter if it was the middle of the night, morning, or afternoon. They did anything to make my mum feel better during that time. My respect for those nurses and workers is within the highest realms of admiration. You can picture this home though. A dying mum surrounded by her 4 kids and loving husband, but a house constantly filled with noise and movement as my mum constantly had to be tended to. My mum was in chronic pain and her lucidness over time was quickly diminishing as she was drifting towards a coma. All we needed was some quiet times with my mum, more time to hold her hand and to say the things that needed to be said. The day my mum died, the house suddenly felt cold, and it was obvious that a bright light had left us. We went in the sea to celebrate my mum, to celebrate the life that she had lived, the memories we had made, and the impact she'd had on all of our lives. Her funeral was 2 weeks after her death. The church was filled with over 800 people. It was amazing to see how many people kindly spent their time to celebrate my mum, and to them I am incredibly grateful. Legacy is not measured on the amount of money you accumulate, but rather the impact you have on those around you. To see the sheer amount of people that she had touched is a moment that I would take with me for the rest of my life, to continually become a better version of myself and to have a positive impact on those around me. How you are remembered is one of the most important things in this life. Obviously, I was pretty shell-shocked after my mum died, and I didn't really want to speak in front of all those people, so I prepared a speech which was then read out during the service. I thought it would be nice for me to share those words with you now. I am one of the 4 luckiest people in the world that is able to call Louise Bracken-Smith my mum. Although she is gone in flesh, she will always be in the hearts and minds of those that knew her, but most importantly in the actions of her family and those that loved her most. Alongside her ambition and willingness to succeed, she had a strong moral compass and openness about her. Mum made friends with everyone she met and created a network of love, not out of obligation or a hidden plan, but because she lived in the moment and loved forming bonds with amazing people. These last 2.5 years of my mum's cancer journey have been nothing short of a masterclass on determination, resilience, her motto of being the best you can be, controlling the controllables, and spreading love and positive energy into the world. On paper, my mum unfortunately did not kick cancer into touch. However, the lessons and love she provided me and my siblings with will last forever. In fact, only a few weeks before her death, she still was determined to beat cancer, which is a true testament to her character and mental fortitude. Mum has had many outward accomplishments with her businesses and her triathlon, or even her amazing personality, but these things still don't truly represent just how amazing she was. Mum appreciated every single second of life and made the most of every day. No matter how tired, annoyed, or ill she was, her caring, loving, and competitive mentality would always shine through. Mum never missed a sports fixture and has always been present in all of our lives. She has created many happy memories and spent much quality time with our family. We enjoyed many highs and lows, but most importantly, we did it together. Mum did not want us to live in fear or sadness over the times we could have had together. Rather, she wanted us to take pride in the moments we shared, and for her death, propel us onto bigger and better things. My mum's death does not represent an end to her legacy or to her life. It represents a checkpoint as her spirit lives on and we can progress into the next steps of our lives. My mum will forever be missed, but her love will live on and my family will honour her legacy as we go on to achieve what we were placed on this earth to do. Until we meet again, Mum, I hope to do you proud. I love you enormously, and I will see you again one day. Harvey. After the funeral, we left the crematorium. My siblings and I waited outside alongside some of my older cousins while my dad, his best friend John, and the rest of the family went into the crematorium. I couldn't accept the reality of losing my mum and didn't want to see what was going to happen. I had no idea there were speakers on the outside of the building. My father said his words, and then The Walls Are Way Too Thin by Holly Humberstone started playing. These were the longest 3 minutes and 45 seconds of my life. I had this wide awakening and felt this incredible presence around me. I felt like I relived many of the most memorable moments again with my mum as pools of tears ran down my face. I wrote an essay that I'd like to share with you that offers some more connection and context on the song. The song The Walls Are Way Too Thin by Holly Humberstone has changed my perception of music forever. My mum would often play it in the car and I would sit there bored, waiting to play another of my songs. As my mum grew more ill, I realised that listening to this song was not about the lyrics or how it sounded, but rather about how it made her feel. As my mindset shifted and I listened more attentively, it made me feel closer and value the time I had with her. From August through Christmas Day, up until a few days before she died in July 2023, my mum and I would go into the sea every day. We often played The Walls Are Way Too Thin on our drive down to the beach and into the freezing sea. Not only did our ritual help me develop a good habit of immersing myself into the cold water, but it also helped me overcome my insecurities about what others might think about me. Every time we would enter the sea, my mum would scream, "Come on, universe, heal me now." Or, "Come on, universe, heal me now." That's a better representation, at the top of her lungs. A phrase that I now associate with her strength and mental determination to overcome her illness even in the last of her days. Even when my mum became paralysed in bed, losing the ability to talk and do the things that she loved to do, I continued to play our song every day. It made me remember the good times we had together, and it served as a constant example of how I should always be the best I can be, control the controllables, 2 phrases my mum often said, and follow her determined, competitive and lovely spirit. At my mum's cremation, I sat alongside I sat outside with my siblings, Freddie and Max, whilst my little sister played with her best friend. I was mentally preparing myself to say my final goodbye, but music was playing outside the crematorium. The walls are way too thin came out of the speakers. This must have been the longest 3 minutes of my entire life. I spent what felt like hours closing my eyes and going over all the positive memories and everlasting bond that I share with my mum. I couldn't say goodbye. Not then, not ever. I hadn't wanted to ever accept that someone I loved more than the sun, the moon, and the stars would be gone forever. The tears from that day had been replaced by a smile, as I was lucky enough to spend 18 years with an angel on earth. Whether I'm working on my podcast, studying for an exam, or training for rugby, if I can keep putting my best foot forward and spreading love into the world, great things will happen. I may not be able to see my mum again in this life, but I will forever have the permanent connection through the walls are way too thin. I promise to look after my dad, younger brothers, Freddie and Max, and little sister Georgie, to ensure her legacy lives on. I love you, Mum, and until we meet again, I hope to do you proud. In that moment when I was sat outside and that music was going on, and the goodbye to my mum was made not only official but permanent, I realised how much I would have to step up. I'd gone as a child from looking up to both my parents, asking for their advice and being the result of their constant kindness, to having this thought that I would now need to look after my baby sister, younger brothers and my dad, whose innocence and childhoods had been destroyed by the evils of cancer. I wanted to share some of the key moments that I had with my mum during this time. Every day, as I mentioned, we'd go in the car or walk down to the beach, even up to a week before her death, all throughout, whether it was Christmas Day to the summer, it didn't matter the time of year. And as I mentioned just before, her saying, "Come on, universe, heal me now," at the top of her lungs. There was, initially when we started saying that, I was quite timid and I didn't want to break up my shell. But she reached that moment where she knew she just didn't care about anything else or what anyone else would say or anything. It was just this level of empowerment that I'd never seen in anything or anyone before. And even in that moment, no matter how frail my mum was, I remember literally 10 days before my mum died, in one of the last swims that I had with just it might have just been me and my mum. She was so frail, so thin, I could literally see the bones in her body. But she had a smile the entire time. We played that song on the way to the beach. And she just seemed so grateful, present, and loving throughout the entire time. And I held her hand. Something that's, very impactful for me is her hand. Just this close connection to her through that, just that connection. And we went in the sea and I found it fucking freezing. And whatever, I'm 85 kilograms, and I think she'd gone down to, 40 or 50 kilograms at the time, plus being unbelievably frail and about to die. And she looked more strong going into that freezing cold sea than I did. And that's the first key moment that I'll take with me forever. The second one is that she fought through the pain to support her loved ones. A major school event at my school was this thing called the 4th of June. Every summer, all the parents would come back to support their kids. And this, although it was on the 4th of June, it was probably about mid-June. And it's a big yearly event. And my mum at this point has less than a month before she's going to die. And yet she still made the trip over to the UK, over to England, to support my brother, to support our family. She must have been through incredibly immense amounts of pain. But it didn't matter to her. She was a mum before anything else. Similarly, I mentioned that my brother Max had won Rosslyn Park. Even in the pain, even when she couldn't properly stand up, she spent days, I think it was 2 days, standing up, screaming at the top of her lungs and putting all of her love and energy into supporting little Maxie. When I'd first decided to take the year off, I felt pretty lost about my sense of direction and what I'd be doing. But as I said, I threw away my phone, I spoke to my mum every day, re-immersed myself into nature. And I have this very vivid memory, and it was a full moon, and all of the stars were glistening outside. And I noticed my mum was holding some crystals in her hand, which she was charging by the moon, whether you believe in that or not. But in that time, it might have only been 20 minutes or half an hour. It felt like an infinitely large amount of time. My mum spoke to me about the infinity of the universe, that everything was connected, and her connection to nature. Again, doesn't matter whether or not you think any of that is true, but I now have a deep emotional attachment anytime there's a full moon, and it makes me think of my mum and feel connected to her. And I feel that moment was one of the most precious memories that I have with my mum, because it makes me always feel like I can connect to her and relate to her no matter what. And you can also, can't describe it. Maybe you should try it when there's a full moon. Just go and sit out there. There's this sort of overwhelming feeling of emotion and level of presentness in that time. And so I felt an intense level of gratitude to be able to share that with my mum on multiple subsequent times. You might have also noticed that I consider my parents an extension of my brain. You might think that's a weird thing to say, but I literally, quite literally, for the past, went to boarding school at the age of 13. I'm 20 now. My mum passed away a year ago, so to 19. So from 13 to 19, kind of ridiculous. I'm getting quite old, relatively. I spoke to both my mum and dad for a cumulative amount for at least an hour every day. From the nonsense that I've been up to in the day to my latest business idea and how I'm going to take on over the world, my next charity event or whatever I was going to do, my parents would always listen to me and always be there. And even if I was, overcomplicating the things I was saying, they'd always be there. And it never felt like this is something they had to do, but they always wanted to be there for me. And lastly, her laugh. My mum just had the ability to make anyone happy with her laugh. She had this almost instant ability to stop arguments. She had a kind heart and always wanted the best for everyone. She loves her family and would do anything for them. And she had this willingness to give and give and give a little bit more, to spread love in a time that could be filled with hate. She made this really, as I mentioned with the 4th of June and the Roslyn Park, she made this really conscious effort to hide her pain so her children could see her as living. I remember when she first shaved her hair off, she was pretty insecure about it. And she got a professional wig, which looked really realistic. But after a period of time, she said, fuck that. I'm not going to wear a wig. I'm not going to pretend who I am. I'm just going to embrace it. So she just had this shaved head. She actually looks a bit like Eminem, which was quite funny. But she just embraced and loved who she was. And in a time when everyone's like, well, what are you going through? She didn't care. She just showed people who she was. And that determined, resilient and loving spirit shone through. And to just have this walking role model every single day, that I'm like, my God, this person is amazing. I just felt like the luckiest person in the world. And lastly, I can't remember what my mum's last words were, but I have this memory that keeps going in my head of my mum just lying down, looking at me. And in the past, maybe the last week or two before she was going to die, I got pretty hectic. What if this 20 years time, just coming up with unrealistic, irrelevant scenarios about things and getting worried about what life would be like. What am I going to tell my grandkids? What am I going to tell my kids about you? What should I do for situations that haven't even come about yet? And there wasn't anything in particular she needed to say. Sometimes it's just about having trust in who you are. So she said, I love you, Harvey. Everything is going to be all right. Back yourself and trust yourself, because you are special. You're really special. And I love you. There was this key emphasis that I can accomplish anything that I put my mind to. This re-emphasis on being the best you can be, controlling the controllables. The year following my mum's death was an awful time. In a time when my family should have been more connected, my dad was attacked, challenging his abilities as a father and as a husband. Our home and our private life was screwed over, and while I was supposed to be starting at university, my brothers and sisters at school, and my dad with his work, we were constantly faced with mental upheavals. People saying, this is what Louise would have wanted, or this is what I think. Opinions of people that shouldn't have given their opinions. because our private lives had been exposed. There was nothing that people felt that they shouldn't say or spread. I had no idea how evil people could be, especially to 4 kids and a husband who had just lost their wife and their mum to cancer. My dad in particular found it very hard to mourn when people were putting their fingers into open wounds. The immediate 2 months after my mum passed away were not too bad for me. I had just started university in the US, and so the novelty of making new friends and meeting new people helped to distract me. But over time, this novelty wore off and reality kicked in, so life became a lot harder. I found that if I could become my best in every other metric, it would put me in the best place. I ensured I got 8 to 9 hours of sleep every night, cut out unhealthy and junk food, stopped drinking alcohol, and surrounded myself with amazing people and put an emphasis on good habits. Even with this, life was still incredibly hard. There is no piece of advice or thing that I can say that will make the pain go away, but I have found a necessity to face these emotions, feelings, and this grief head on, instead of trying to pretend that it wasn't there in the first place. I have cried every single day my mum died, but I think of the pain less frequently, and I have gotten better as time has moved on. Having gone through this experience, I feel like my family and I have picked up a lot of things that you wouldn't have otherwise, that you can't really gain from a book or, just by listening to someone that kind of hasn't been through the experience as a family member or as a person going through it through my mum. But just sort of over time, I sort of picked up on these things. And so I wanted to give some practical advice for cancer patients that I have found. This is by no means medical opinion or anything like that, but rather if I was to go through the process again, what sort of advice I'd give myself, which you might be able to take from it. Live life with no regrets. And what that means is, even in the moments that my mum was in immense pain, she made a moment to live every single day. She didn't worry about anything that she couldn't do. She lived every day to the max, going in the sea every day, spending time with her kids, going to watch my brother win an international rugby tournament. Don't just hold in your pain. You want to be able to die knowing you said everything you need to say, but also make sure you don't leave any regrets. Try not to just destroy relationships for no need, your world might be ending, but the rest of the world just goes on. So remember that. A big one for us is don't just rely on modern medicine. Look at holistic medicine. Look at the whole you and all the different things you need to take into account. Look at wellness, look at your diet, so that even if this might not have a big impact on the overall improvement of your health, you can at least feel like you're contributing to your fight and you don't just feel like helpless. Watch out for people who are promising hope with no substance. You get a lot of people promising this cured XYZ. Maybe it has, but likely it hasn't. So it's not to say don't try it, don't do things, don't speak to these types of people, but just be wary that, especially while you're vulnerable, people might try and take advantage of you. Big one for my mum, and you probably noticed that even in this pretty emotional podcast, keep smiling. Life is shit a lot of the time. There's always going to be fucking horrible things going on in the world and in your life. But something my mum always did, she kept smiling, and I think that makes a big difference. Manage your energy, focus on things that are really important. In those hours when, my mum was completely broken. I mean, I don't think she didn't always focus on what was most important. When you're getting bombarded by people and everyone feels like they want to have their say and their interaction with her, when in reality, sometimes you've only got to focus on a few people, and you've got to be realistic with yourself because you really don't have any energy at all. You go from like a young kid, being able to be energetic or 18 hours a day to being an adult, maybe having 12 or 16 hours. And then when you're ill, you don't have your maximum energy at any point in time. You're constantly restless, immobile, and you're constantly have the thought that you're going to die. So just be wary of that. Be present. Going in the sea helped a lot for my mum for that. Don't sweat the small stuff, Be confident in yourself and be proud of yourself. Love yourself. Whatever the outcome, be at peace. Don't die with regrets. Say the things you need to say. Be tolerant of those around you. People can act not themselves when struggling with your illness, so make sure you're patient with them. Be accepting of the situation. Don't spend time thinking, why me? Big one for my mum and my family is don't mourn the living, make the most of every day. I think a lot of her family members and, friends were like, oh, you got cancer, sit in this bed, There's almost this expectation from people to just, sure, you may have lost the battle against the illness, but you haven't lost against life. My mum didn't die in January 2021. My mum died July 12, 2023, and I think that's really important. She got an extra, she died at 50, it's 2.5 years, another 5% of her life, because she lived. And I think that 5% is some of the most impactful, not just for her, but also for us as her kids and her family and friends and my dad. And, if you can, I don't know what living is for you. For living for her was spending time with those most important people, going in the sea, challenging yourself, pushing yourself mentally, physically, enjoying life, being present. Like, that is what life is all about. It's not about sitting in a hospital bed. But on top of that, still tell people to fuck off. You don't need to be nice to everyone. There are still dickheads in the world. Sorry, excuse my language, but seriously, don't let them take advantage of you. Don't be accepting of everyone. Still keep your boundaries. And on top of that, I say keep a happiness bubble around you. You don't want people frowning when they see you. When my mum was, it was pretty obvious that she was going to die. Living in Jersey, the population is only 100,000, 9 miles by 5 miles, so 45 square miles total. And there's they call town St. Helier, which is the sort of capital of the island, the main hustle bustle of the place. Hardly hustle bustle, but the main centre of things. So, when you walk there, you go to a shop, go to a petrol station, gas station, whatever you want to call it, the likelihood of you knowing someone is very high. And, you just be trying to live about your normal life. And then people would instantly go like this. They'd crane their neck. I'm so sorry. And sure, it's very nice, for people to express their love and their care. But it almost becomes a bit laughable, the amount of people that do it to you. And my mum found this as well. So she just tried to find the fun in that. But you don't want to be around people that are doing that to you the whole time, that are always just feeling sorry for you. Just through my mum's experience, and when I lost my friend, they want to just be around people that are just going to, mum just wants to be mum, she doesn't want to be this person with cancer. Mum is mum, so treat them like that. Treat your friend like Louise. Treat Louise as Louise. Don't treat Louise as, oh my God, I'm so sorry. How much would that piss you off? Not lastly, but say everything you need to say and tell the important people that you love them. This feeds back to my previous point, but continue to create memories. There was a huge pressure on my mum to wrap herself up in cotton wool and just be sick, but mum also wanted to live. This is hugely important. When staring death in the face, the day-to-day is treatment, doctors. So it is essential to make sure to have time to be a husband, to be a wife, to live a normal life, to have time to be a mum. We went on holiday with my mum in the last year and made some memories that will last a lifetime, particularly for my little sister Georgie. She was able to see mummy in her best light, even when she was going through the hardest days of her life. My mum had amazing fortitude and strength, which gave her the ability to do that, to push through this pain and make it happen, because that's what she loved doing. Remember, time is precious, so don't waste it. Make sure to laugh. Laughter is good for the soul. You can't be serious and miserable the whole time. You'll go insane. And tell stories, make stories, have fun, enjoy things. I can't even begin to imagine what my mum was going through, or anyone that has cancer. Obviously, it's your decision to do what you want with your time, but both be conscious of the memory that you're going to live in those around you, be honest with them, love them, say that you love them, care for them, laugh with them, smile with them. But them is not everybody. Them is not the barber down the street, your friend that hasn't made the effort with you in recent years. Because in that moment, it might feel like they're trying to be really nice to you, but actually they're just a bit in themselves that's their little pool of regret. And in that moment, they've pinned it towards not spending time with you, when in reality, it's probably a whole host of things. If you want to see your barber down the street or whatever that friend, go for it. But in my opinion, you can't be everything to everyone at all times, particularly when you've only got 112 hours left to live, or 256 hours left to live, or whatever it is. So be very conscious with your time, because it might be the last amount of your time that you have to live. On top of that, being the son of someone that's passed away from cancer and the best friend of someone that's passed away from cancer, I wanted to give some advice for family members and friends. For people close to your loved one that is terminally ill, my advice would be, don't focus on the concept that they're going to be gone, but instead about living in the moment. I made sure to enjoy every second I had with my mum before she was gone. In fact, one of my friends when I started boarding school had just lost his mum to cancer, and I reached out to him the first time my mum got ill, and I was still in that phase of like, don't know how much time I want to spend with her, because that negative energy sort of thing. And I also found it really hard to see her. But he said to me, he was like, Harvey, if I could go back, the number one thing that I'd want to do is spend more time with my mum. So my advice to you would just be spend every single possible second with your mum as you can. Enjoy it, make the most of it. Be aware of your loved one and their immediate family. Don't be a selfish griever. Catch yourself if you find yourself talking about all of your problems and worries. Don't send your entire life story over to them on text and all of your regrets, but instead your happy memories with them and how much you love them. Do kind things for them. Bring them something other than flowers. People often brought us food, which was really nice and very helpful. Make sure to tell them you love them. Offer to do things with their kids or family members. Make sure that they know that after they're gone, their family will be okay. Look after yourself. They need to know that you're going to be okay. They have themselves to worry about, not you harming yourself or getting into trouble. And like the whole point of this entire podcast that I'm trying to build, become the best version of yourself. Don't use this as an excuse to let yourself go, develop an alcohol or drug problem, but to better yourself. Use it as motivation to push yourself to destroy the negativity in yourself, give up. The part of you that's telling you to quit, the part of you that's telling you your life is over. Stare that part of yourself in the mirror and fucking destroy it. Train harder, eat healthier, sleep better, be kinder. When my mum died, I realized that if I could optimize every other variable in my life, it would leave me in much better stead. I would give you the same advice. I think it is a necessity, because if you don't do that, if you don't improve the other areas of your life, the grief will become so unbearable for you to do anything. Don't be a dickhead. No matter how angry you are at them, their past or things they have done, leave them the fuck alone. They'll be gone soon. Keep your anger to yourself, but don't take it out on them. Use this anger to motivate you to push yourself. Don't produce wasted energy. Don't be mean to someone that's about to die. Like, come on. Don't be a snake. I have a no snake policy in my life. Don't be trying to see what you can take. See what you can give. Giving is more fulfilling than taking anyways. Don't try and take advantage of the vulnerable. Don't be fake nice to their family. Even if you don't believe in an afterlife or in karma, think about how you would want to be remembered. Think about the impact that you want to have. Don't be a head tilter. They know they're going to die, but even people that think they're going to die want to have happy moments in their lives. Every person in the street that would see my mum or my family would tilt their heads or cry. It can be great to show emotion, but sometimes it's better to put on a brave face and just be happy to see them for them, not as a dying cancer patient. Don't be jealous. Jealousy is not a good trait. Be grateful that you're still alive and don't spend your time worrying about what you don't have. This is a negative cycle that never goes away. Talk with your siblings, your friends, your family, and your loved ones. Talking is healing. Don't hold it all in. My siblings and I all really pulled together during this time and relied on each other. Equality in a relationship is not about two or more people helping each other equally during a time, but helping the one that is down no matter how long it takes, and doing the same when someone else is down because you care about them and you know they would do the same for you. Be conscious of them. When my mum was upstairs, we have the garden outside. We'd always leave the windows open so my mum could hear us playing outside with each other and with my little sister Georgie. For her to know life was going on would make her happy. Been amazed by people's opinions and actions. Instead of trying to understand what myself, my siblings and my dad are going through, they've had their view on the world that they've tried to force onto us. My mum was a really strong character, and through her illness, she wanted to live. But at the end, when her energy was going, this gave way for people to wrongly advantage themselves and insert themselves into our lives, putting their own wishes and worldview ahead of my mum's, my dad's, my siblings, when we were not always able to defend ourselves. Since my mum's passing, whether it has come from a place of love or just people having an opinion, they've not always said the nicest things. I would encourage people to be kind, to try to empathize, to take a step back and to ask yourself if you know all the facts. And if you don't judge. One of the strengths of the relationship between us as children with my mum and dad was that we always felt empowered to talk and get different viewpoints from both our parents, so we can make an informed decision and not an emotional decision. People need to realize that we no longer have both mum and dad. We just have our dad on this earth. So anytime they speak bad of him, speak behind his back or criticize him, they are all criticizing the four of us. 4 kids who have just lost their mum to cancer. Prior to my mum's death, I could not think of a single time she wasn't there for me. No matter the time of day or night, she always put us first, and she truly stood by that until the day she died. I cannot bring my mum back, but what I can do is live by the values she represented. To live in the moment, spread love into the world, and place value into the relationships we have with those around us. When my mum realised she was going to die, she was not filled with regret, remorse or anger, but instead of fulfillment. She thought, how lucky am I that I didn't get hit by a bus 2.5 years ago, but that I have been given this golden opportunity to spend more time with and say goodbye to the people I love most. You may have noticed that I mentioned I will see my mum again. I was raised Catholic by my mum. This is not a religious statement. Whilst I hope I will see her in heaven one day, I truly believe that her spirit lives on through the embodiment of goodness in the world. Every time I cry, every time I mourn her, a smile appears on my face. I miss her every day, but I feel so lucky to call the greatest person I've ever known my mum. You might be inspired by this story, or you might not like me at all. But either way, I ask that you take the time for those that you care about. We all chase the dream car, house, best education, job, and all other measures of extrinsic success. But I have found that I was actually successful all along because I had someone that loved me unconditionally and that I too loved unconditionally. It is easy to undermine. It is easy to criticize. It is easy to complain about every little thing that happens to you. But this does not lead to happiness. Find happiness in the things that you have and the people you care for and that care for you. 2 years ago, we were planning to run Ironman races, to climb Kilimanjaro, to travel the world, to chase our dreams, to live in the moment. And today, I am without one of the people I love more than everything. Be present, live for the moment, get into nature and tell your family you love them. We are all told we only live once, but we only live like that until we realize we're going to die. If you could take one thing away from this podcast, I would say, go and live, for tomorrow might never come, quite literally. You are special and your loved ones are special, so tell them that before it's too late. That is the end of the podcast, but I just wanted to add a few more words. I think what's so hard for me, as I mentioned before, I'm dyslexic. Not that that's had too much of a negative impact on my life. I love the ability to be able to think differently, to see things differently to other people. But I'm not always the best with words. And so if this didn't come across to you very well, I apologize. But even so, even if I was the best literary person in the world, I still don't think I can put into words just how amazing my mum was. And I hope all of you would consider your mum to be the best person in the world. But I don't say that a year on having just missing my mum. I felt like that every single day. Every day when I woke up, I knew that both my mum and my dad would do absolutely anything for me. The amount of times I felt upset about the smallest thing, they called me at 3 a.m. They looked after me every single day of my life. And I am unbelievably grateful to them for that entire time. You might have noticed me looking across, and I keep looking at photos of my mum throughout this podcast. Of course, both of them are just her smiling and my dad smiling. It's hard to give advice for people without knowing their situation, but I hope you can take something away from our story. And I'm sure if you asked me to do the same podcast in a year's time, it would be very different. And I think the same would be said of my dad, Freddie, Max, and Georgie. For me, the greatest person I met was my mum. For you, it might be your brother, it might be your friend, it might be your barber. You don't need someone to be about to die to enjoy the life that you have with them. We're stuck in a world of individualism, of people in their houses by themselves, boys scared to talk to girls in the street, people so consumed by their phones that they're more interested in seeing what the latest TikToker is doing than forming any real relationships for themselves. People that are so quick to give out their opinions and to hate on other people before looking introspectively at themselves and improving their own life. People that are so quick to judge, to take away every accomplishment from everyone else. People that are so quick to cut down every single politician, every charity owner, every businessman that is trying to do well in the world. A world that is disincentivizing people to become better people, to grow, to build businesses, to build charities, to become a better person, when everyone else is looking to cut down, to gossip, to take away from their accomplishments. I've always looked at trying to form change on scale. I haven't done that significantly just yet. I did big charity work when I was younger. I've tried to build little businesses, doing clubs at school, but I haven't had my global impacts just yet. And at some point, I would like to have a positive impact on the world on a larger scale. But the thing that I have realized is that change doesn't start with having a small impact on 1 million people. Change has a big impact when speaking to a small people and touching not 5,000, but one person's life. I don't care how many views this gets, but I do care if you listening, and by you, I mean you listening, have been able to learn something and that this has touched you and maybe given you a new way of thinking about things. I hope that you never lose your mum, particularly at such a young age, particularly as a 9-year-old or 20-year-old or 50-year-old husband. But make sure to enjoy every moment you have with them. Be present, love them, laugh, have fun. But if you are going to lose them, just thank yourself for the times that you did have with them rather than the times you don't. Thank you very much for listening. I appreciate you coming on this journey with me. This is just the start of my journey, what I'm trying to accomplish through podcast Personable and in the rest of my life. I have a lot of plans moving forward, and anything that I accomplish, I would mostly tie back to both my mum, my dad, and my 3 siblings. So thank you to them. Thank you for you to listening. Keep striving and keep becoming the best that you can be. Thank you.